Welcome back, Defenders. Let's get caught up on the collapse of Russia's shipping industry. Third tanker sends distress signal as Russia deals with Black Sea oil spill. And this has been an eventful week for Russian shipping. For sure, 2 of their inland tankers sank in the Black Sea, releasing thousands of tons of oil products into the water. There was also a crane ship that sank in the Black Sea, but no oil there. And this third tanker, I don't believe it sank, but it was leaking oil into the Black Sea. And now we have reports of a 4th tanker, this time in the Pacific near the Kuril Islands of Japan. No reports that this ship sank or released oil, but its engine did stall and it sent out a mayday. The Kuril Islands are located right here, and they're kind of disputed with Japan. But 5 incidents in a single week? This doesn't seem like 5 isolated problems, but it's more systemic of Russia's shipping industry. When you're operating a fleet of shadow tankers in violation of international sanctions, you don't really care about safety regulations or proper maintenance, and their ships are starting to break down. On top of their rail industry collapsing and their airline industry not doing very well either. But what about this oil spill? Oil spill washes up on Russia's Black Sea coast after a storm hits their aging tankers. And these videos are terrible, but I'm going to share this with you. This is what the beaches look like in Russia now on the Black Sea.
Вот и первое животное, которое пострадало, которое я увидел. Смотрите, что происходит сюда. Она вся в нефти, бедолага. Скажи мне, что с тобой?
Oil is not water soluble. You can't rinse it off. So there's nothing these wildlife, birds or fish or anything can do unless a human being comes along and scrapes it off of them. Lots of videos online. Russia can't hide this. The oil is hitting the beaches of Russia, but soon it'll be hitting the beaches of all the countries on the Black Sea coastline. And what do? This is how you clean up an oil spill. This is not a very quick or efficient process. Shovels and bags. Shovels and bags to pick up thousands of tons of oil products washing up on the beach. There should be an international response. The nations of the Black Sea should be working together to clean up this oil spill. But Russia's not going to do that. This is a low priority for Russia, given that they're losing this war in Ukraine. And I don't even think the Russian government is responding in any way. These are probably just locals who live near the beach doing what they can. But as soon as the tide goes out and the tide comes back in, they're going to have to shovel again. Keep shoveling, bag after bag, and they're probably going to have to burn it all off. What do you do with this? The other top story that has the internet abuzz: Russian police arrest a suspect in this general's killing. This was a general that was assassinated in Moscow by an IED planted on an electric scooter. Now, the Russians are saying they caught the assassin, but I saw the video and this is nonsense. The Russians just grabbed some random immigrant and then forced him to confess to the killing to calm the hysteria and make the Russian people feel like they got the guy, but they didn't get the guy. Whoever planted this bomb wasn't going to stick around Moscow to be caught. Now, the controversy is the reaction coming from international partners. Not a good idea. Trump's peace envoy criticizes the Russian general assassination. And my initial response is, of course, General Keith Kellogg, a general is not going to support generals being assassinated far behind the front lines. But this is hypocritical coming from a member of the Trump administration when Donald Trump himself has assassinated generals in other people's armies. Famously, General Soleimani was assassinated by Trump as he was just going to the Baghdad airport to catch his flight. Now the response is, this guy's a terrorist. It's okay to kill him. Well, to the Ukrainians, this guy was a terrorist. He was in charge of Russia's chemical weapons program. So what's the difference? On top of that, the hypocrisy, because the Russians are trying to assassinate Ukrainian generals. This is General Budanov and Ukraine spy chief's wife recovering after being poisoned. This was November of last year, but yes, the Russians are trying to assassinate Budanov and other Ukrainian high-ranking officials. So this is a non-story. People who want to be upset about it, they can be upset about it. But it's no coincidence that General Kirillov was charged by the SBU a day before he was assassinated. The message is clear. Ukraine isn't going to wait for international courts to arrest the countless Russians who have committed war crimes. They're going to seek justice themselves. And I think these targeted assassinations might continue, potentially for decades, as Ukraine is going to seek justice if the international community is not going to stand with them and help them do it legally. But the aspect of this story that everyone's focused on is the electric scooter. Objectively, it's kind of humorous that one of these dumb electric scooters that exist in all major cities now was used as the explosive device. And the internet is the internet, so they're going to have some fun. Let me share with you some of these memes. Here's a shaded map of all nuclear-armed countries that lost generals due to scooter explosions. General Budanov doesn't assassinate people with a silencer. He uses a scooter. Here's a NAFO fella hiding in the bushes with a scooter. Here's an AI-generated image of Santa Claus gifting a scooter to Putin, as we all would hope. Scooter's gonna scoot. And possibly the best reaction, this is friend of the channel Richard Woodruff. I'm gonna play his video.
Good morning, everybody. Whoa! Whoa, Jesus, guys, I nearly got assassinated. That was crazy. Whoa, and there was a second killer coming. Woohoo! I got lucky there. Oh, good thing I wasn't in Moscow. Those things might have been a bit more explosive.
I think we're going to move on. Yeah, we're just going to move on, guys. Now, according to Reuters, NATO has taken over control of coordinating military aid to Ukraine from the United States. Donald Trump on January 20th is going to pause military aid and cooperation, at least temporarily. So the Biden administration is being proactive in trying to transfer officially to NATO as many tasks and roles that the United States was doing. This is a good thing. Europeans should have more control over European security and managing the logistics of getting military aid to Ukraine. Zelensky has also confirmed that Trump advisor General Kellogg will visit Ukraine in early January. And according to Bloomberg, General Kellogg might also choose to go to Moscow as well in early January. Now, this is a disadvantage for the Russians, because anybody in the Trump administration can call and visit Ukraine or any of our NATO allies at any time when preparing or talking about these peace talks. But with the Russians, because they're hostile and they're our enemy, it's not as easy to communicate with them. So I would rather General Kellogg go to Moscow and have conversations and sit in meetings than Donald Trump or some other people in his administration. So I view this as a good thing. If General Kellogg does go to Moscow, he once again is there to have conversations and listen. He's not officially negotiating anything until Trump takes office on January 20th. There was a recent appearance, I'll link the full clip down below, It's about 4.5 minutes, and because General Kellogg is a paid contributor to Fox Business, this is actually really good that he's going to make an appearance on the channel once a week. This will be an opportunity for us to get updates on how the negotiations are going. If he keeps appearing on television for about 5 minutes once a week, we're going to get good information and good updates about how all these conversations are going. But Zelensky is starting to get really honest because he knows one way or the other, things are going to be not coming to an end, but the current level and intensity of fighting the last 3 years, it will start, I think, decelerating. Peace talks only possible when Russia runs out of resources. The real war map this entire time has been Russia's bank account. As long as Russia is able to sign about 1,000 guys a day to sign new contracts, as long as they can build new missiles, build new tanks, replace their losses, then Ukraine is standing still. If we just give more aid to Ukraine and Russia can regenerate at the exact same rate, then Ukraine's not making progress. This entire time, we've needed some kind of economic or political collapse inside of Russia. So here's Zelensky speaking the truth. Zelensky says Ukraine has no strength to recapture Crimea and Donbass. Now that is very specific. He didn't say all the occupied territories, just Crimea and Donbass. Perhaps Ukraine still has ambition to get to the other side of the river or retake Melitopol, but as far as Crimea and the metropolitan cities of Donetsk and Luhansk, Ukraine doesn't have the manpower, and they're not getting enough military support from the West to defeat the Russians resoundingly on the battlefield. We need some kind of economic or political collapse inside of Russia for Ukraine to get back all of their internationally recognized territory. Now, the good news is we're closer than ever. Russia's central bank rates are approaching 23%. We're seeing catastrophic failures of their airline industry, their railroad network, their shipping industry, cascades of bankruptcies, and just this week, their defense industry is speaking out because none of them are operating at a profit. And they've not been operating at a profit for years now. EU in early discussions to deploy up to 100,000 peacekeeping troops. If there is some kind of freeze in the conflict that the Russians would ever agree to, then Ukraine needs some kind of security guarantee. If the NATO alliance is saying Ukraine can't join, what other option is there than to deploy European peacekeeper troops? I think Trump likes this idea, but we would need European partners to agree to it. And why would Russia agree to this? Having 100,000 NATO troops, I mean, yeah, they're individual countries sending them as peacekeepers, but wouldn't this be 100,000 NATO troops now stationed in Ukraine, where 3 years ago, Ukraine was neutral? NATO was not in Ukraine, but now they have to. Let's check in on the North Koreans. North Korean forces suffer 1,000 casualties in Russia's Kursk Oblast. For the last 3 or 4 days, they've been participating in frontline operations. Being used in meat assaults, they're not the primary thrust, they're the distraction. The North Koreans are being sent in to absorb the drones and the artillery, and then Russia's special forces flank from the sides in order to take these dug-in positions. And 1,000 casualties is already over 10% of Kim Jong-un's deployed forces, and they've really only been participating in direct combat for a couple days now. Intercepted Russian phone calls suggest North Korean troops are suffering trainloads full of wounded. Here is an intercepted phone call between a nurse in a hospital in Moscow and a Russian soldier stationed near Kharkiv. And she claims that hundreds of wounded North Korean soldiers are being taken by train to this hospital to be treated, but because of the language and cultural differences, This nurse is having a hard time treating them, so I'm going to attempt to read this phone conversation, but just remember, it's two people talking back and forth. They put, you hear that? They put a Korean in our hospital. Yeah, you told me. Well, I told you they should, and they did. They put them in here today. This guy then says, I'm behind the Kursk direction. 120 people on the train. Larissa tells me, how will you understand that they need pain relief? So the Russian soldier is asking the nurse, you don't speak Korean, how do you know how to treat these guys? I say, I won't, damn it. If they scream, it means it hurts. Damn it. Oh, she's teaching them how to say damn it in Russian. What else? Yeah. What are these Koreans? Are they elite? Freeing up specific effing rooms for them yet. So these North Koreans are being kept in nicer rooms than the average Russian soldier being brought into the hospital. And this Russian is offended that the Koreans are getting better treatment than he and his comrades. Are they so privileged or something? Well, the imported ones. Imported? I don't care what kind of imported ones. My guys are laughing, saying, Nastya, what if they tell you to give them pain relief? And I say, I just tell them to go to hell. I don't understand what you're saying to me. No Russian at all. We're through a translator with them, and they say something to me. This translator translates, it's somehow wrong, it's a mess. All on the same face. How we're going to tell the difference between them, I don't know. So this is the Russian nurse saying that all these North Korean guys look the same, and how is she going to keep track of who needs what at what times as far as medication and changing bandages? I don't know. I tell them to write F on their foreheads with a marker. So that's one way. You could just start marking all their foreheads to tell them apart. They're all dressed up. All the colors were assigned at the hospital. Are we supposed to effing color code them now? Well, it doesn't matter. They're going to come to the hospital all in blue. How the heck are we supposed to tell the difference? I guess they're color-coded based on the severity of their injuries as they arrive to the hospital. On their hands, they even have a effing tag stuck on their strap, on that strap. It's a damn mess like a zoo. I'm saying soon there won't even be anyone to talk to. They'll be mumbling in their gibberish, so she's calling the Korean language gibberish. It's a mess. It is forbidden to speak English, to speak to them in English, because they're North Koreans, and they're kind of with us, and the South is kind of with America, and we speak English in America. It is forbidden for them to speak in English, and we can't tell them something in English. That's effing crazy. I can't imagine these North Koreans know much English, but just because English dominates science and medicine, a lot of words in medicine or in a hospital are English words. So they have to use an official translator to go from Korean to Russian to do all of this caretaking, and it's just a catastrophe. It's just, oh, Russia. Let's now switch it up and talk about Syria. You kick out the Russians, we will lift sanctions. EU hints to Syrian authorities. This is the path we're going in. If the Syrians are willing to completely expel all Russian forces, then the United States, the G7, and the EU might start lifting sanctions on Syria and giving them official recognition and even diplomatic status. And this is crazy because Syria has been on the U.S. Department of State's state sponsor of terrorism list since 1979, going all the way back to when Assad's father came to power in Syria. But yeah, if this new rebel government wants to stabilize their economy and actually help their people, just get rid of the Russians and the West will start giving them economic aid, I'm sure. And Russia's moving in this direction, though it could take weeks. Russia moves military equipment to its coastal bases in Syria for evacuation. And just look at the size of this cargo plane and all of these trucks waiting to be loaded up. I don't know how many flights a day the Russians are running, but how many of these trucks can fit in this plane? 2, 3, 4? It's then got to take off and then immediately come back to pick up the next 3 or 4 trucks. This is going to take a really long time. But the Russians are moving in the right direction to get out of the country. Russia moves air defense systems from Syria to Libya after Assad's fall. And this is what the Russians are hoping, that they can pivot and then beef up their presence on this base in Libya. Libya right now is not really a coherent state. The official government of Libya doesn't have control of this region. This region of Libya is basically being controlled by a warlord cooperating with the Russians, and they're using this base in Libya to conduct their operations in Africa. Russia would only do this if they were still turning a profit on toppling these governments and then getting control of their gold mines and diamond mines and whatever. But if we can cut this node, then all of Russia's Africa Corps operations will collapse. Putin also gave his annual address. He's done it remotely or canceled it the last couple years, but this year he wanted to show up and talk for about 3.5 hours. He sounded incoherent. I looked at the clips and I was trying to figure out which ones to show you guys, but he doesn't really make sense. Nothing he says sounds like he understands how bad things are for Russia right now. Case in point, he was asked about Syria, and he's trying to spin it to his people that being kicked out of Syria is not that bad. You mentioned Syria. You and those who pay your salary, he's talking about a foreign journalist, I think it was NBC or something. You and those who pay your salary want to portray everything that's happening in Syria as some kind of failure, some kind of defeat for Russia. I assure you that's not the case, and I'll tell you why. After all, we came to Syria 10 years ago, so a terrorist enclave like what we observed in some other countries would not be created there, like let's say in Afghanistan. So he's talking about the defeat of ISIS in Syria and how he couldn't let Syria become the next Afghanistan, even though Russia right now is cooperating with the Taliban and even seeking to take the Taliban off their list of state sponsors of terrorism. But let's continue. Overall, we have reached our goal. Even those groups that once fought the Assad regime, the governmental troops, also underwent some changes. It is not for nothing that today many European countries and the United States want to establish relations with them. If they are a terrorist organization, why are you going there? So they've changed, haven't they? And this means that our goal has been achieved to some extent. So because Western partners are trying to cooperate with the new government of Syria, Putin is saying Russia won. All the terrorists are gone in Syria now. There's no reason for Russia to stay there anymore. Wow. Okay, we're going to move on. We're going to keep moving, guys. Let's get to the bad news for Russia. Drones strike last operational oil refinery in Russia's Rostov region. It's a pretty big oil fire. Lots of pictures and videos down below. I'll link them if you want to see them, but I'm just struggling to fathom how much Russia has lost in revenue this year from all of their oil refineries catching on fire. This was done with the drone strike. One of Russia's largest chemical plants reportedly attacked in the Rostov region. This was a chemical plant that made solvent propellant for rocket motors, and Ukraine struck it with some drones. Not sure how bad the damage was. Russians lose another 16 million Ka-52 Alligator helicopter, this time to friendly fire. This was reported by pro-Kremlin military bloggers as fratricide. Train collision injures 14 in Russia's frozen far north. This was in Murmansk. And a double-decker passenger train collided with a freight train, and there were casualties. Pretty nasty when two trains hit each other, but this happens like once a week now in Russia. Poland to use EU presidency to fast-track Ukraine's NATO and EU membership. The presidency of the EU rotates between all the members, and I guess Poland's turn is coming up soon. If you remember, it was a big deal when Hungary took it over, but it's been relatively quiet, and their, I think, 6-month term is almost up. So here's the nice message that Prime Minister Tusk of Poland wrote for Zelensky. My appeal to Western leaders from Lviv: stop speculating about Ukraine's possible defeat. It has nothing to do with the facts. Ukraine, despite some naysayers, defends itself effectively against the Russian aggression, even though no one gave it a chance in the first days of the war. Do you remember? You remember it best. And you have proven in all those years that you need to think about with faith in your strength. And you believed in your strength. Now is the time for the whole West to believe in its own strength, possibility, and its ability to convince all the actors of this great game that Ukraine and the whole world deserves just peace and respect for territorial integrity and borders. We can no longer hesitate. And then Zelensky responded with a thank you. Let's get to the good news for Ukraine. European Commission transferred 4.1 billion euros to Ukraine. Fantastic. The United Kingdom announced 283 million in military aid for Ukraine. Thank you so much to the amazing people of the UK. Final clip I want to play for you is President Zelensky in the city of Lviv on the field of Mars, honoring the memory of fallen Ukrainian soldiers. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.